with the UK's faster payments and SEPA. The EU has a pretty robust instant payment system where folks, it's been in production, I think, since 2010. So they're being used all over Europe. All right, so let's stop sharing that for a minute and keep going. The other place you can go, and NEACH is your location for that.
Welcome in, everybody. You're listening to Wrestling Payments, a podcast where we help payment professionals contend with the challenges of modernizing their payments operations and identifying ways to build for the future. If you're interested in payments innovation and modernization, you're in the right place. Now, let's get into it.
Hello and welcome to Wrestling Payments. Today I have a really interesting episode, and it's interesting because I don't know where we're going to end. I came in, I had a very early podcast scheduled to be recorded. So I rushed in, I set up just in time, I turned on all the machinery that you see or you don't see around you, and they canceled. So I'm sitting here, and it gives me a time to kind of step back and think about something I want to say. And something I want to say has to do with faster payments, instant payments. And, you know, as you produce podcasts, you're trying to produce a podcast for the world. But not in this case, it's a really narrowly focused podcast. It's going to be focused on implementing faster payments. Let me start again. This all started in 2015. The U.S. Central Bank, Federal Reserve, looked around and said, something's going on. We need to make payments better, make them faster. Take a look at how payments flow in the U.S. and see if we're where we're supposed to be. And they said, nay, we are not where we're supposed to be. And why is that? It's because around the world at the time, other geographies were implementing faster payments. They were implementing alternative payments. So in the sub-Saharan countries, we have traditional banking here. We have financial institutions, we have systems, we have third-party processors, we have lots of financial institutions, lots of peoples, and lots of financial institutions. So what we saw is that, like in the sub-Sahara, the banks didn't lead the charge. The telephone companies did. M-Pesa is a payment system based on your cell phone. So they got in the hands of the people, and the telephone company said, how can we, make things better for them? And what they did is they made payments easier for them. The U.S. looked at that and said, we need to do better. They started a multi-year project involving all different industries, including financial institutions, including consumers, and they decided that, yes, faster payments was something we wanted, something that would help, whether a person was underserved or there was a liquidity need, they needed money faster, they wanted to settle debts faster, they wanted to just move money around faster. And faster is relative, right? Faster is faster than we could today. This is really going to be more Joe talking than the Wrestling Payments podcast. So what did that mean? A complaint. Everyone talks about the ACH and says, ACH, you got to send it 3 to 4 days in advance. And that's not true. Yes, it can take 3 to 4 days. It can also take a day. It can also be the same day. So there's lots of payment options around. Checks can be fast. The checks are all image right now, if you didn't know. The law around it is really the piece of paper that you reproduce from the image of the check is a legal check. That's the legalese around it. But technically, checks are traveling via image after they get deposited. Cards have all been around. Cards are pretty instant. They have their own drawbacks and advantages. There's debit cards, there's credit cards, all different ways that payments can move faster. The key to these instant payments they were settled immediately. So debit card, credit card is you're putting money on a debt, your charge account, and the account, you're going to pay the account later somehow. Monthly, you're going to pay that charge account. So that's a different animal. That is not, settled money. You have a debt when you finish using a credit card. Debit cards are closer, right? So debit cards use the same instant technology, but they settle over the ACH. So if you're going to say ACH is 3 to 5 days, debit cards are 3 to 5 days, because they use the same backbone. They use the ACH to settle. And if you're a merchant, I know that my son is a merchant, and he gets his settlement the next morning. So it's pretty fast, right? It's not instant. It's not settled immediately, but it is fast. Emerges two winners, right? So the first winner, the leader of the pack, was RTP, the real-time payment system. And let me share for a minute some screenshots for the folks watching the YouTube video. So let's share. And it's of note that RTP just had its first $1.1 billion transaction day. So $1.1 billion flowed in a single day. They're pretty new. They're about 5 years old. It is a brand new payment system, right? The first one since ACH came along. And RTP came out with a solution, and that's the clearinghouse. They came up with a solution. They came out with, rules. How do you process these things? They came out with all the technology. And I think I may be getting a little off track, but they were the first out of the chute. FedNow followed, and I'd like to say quickly, but it wasn't quickly. It was about 5 years later. FedNow, last July, happy anniversary, launched. And they've had some great adoption. Again, everything's relative, but they have reportedly over 800 financial institutions that have said, count me in. And here's where we get to the point, right? The point is, if you're a financial institution innovator, you've looked at real-time payments, and you've studied it, and you've learned the rules, and you've learned how they flow. And we are at a point now where you're picking solutions. And if you picked a solution 5 years ago, you implemented RTP. If you're picking a solution now, there's a couple of options for you. Point is, you've done the work. You've done the homework. You've sat in a class. You've attended a website. You watched a video. You've learned how it works. What's the use case? What are we going to use it for? What are the things that we need to be careful about? But now you're to the point where you're bringing it back to the institution. And this is why this topic's so specific. You're bringing it back to the institution, and you're saying, all right, everyone, let's do it. And their answer immediately is, what are we doing? You now have to start again, and you have to teach everyone, bring them all up to speed on what is a faster payment, what is an instant payment, what are the risks, what are the benefits, what are the use cases, all of that information. What's the technology? And that's where this podcast was formed, right? To address, to really bring everyone up to speed. We've been doing that. I've been doing that for over 30 years. Whether it's a ACH rule change, whether it's a regulation change, whether it's the RDC turning a check into an image and check 21, the association NEACH has been training folks for years on how do I do this? What's important? So that's what this episode really is geared toward. How do I bring everyone along to bring them all up to speed to what we need to know? And I know that you have a very specific project plan. Your project plan is worked out with the vendor. It's worked out with the provider, right? Whether it's the FedNow or the clearinghouse, with here's the things you have to have in place in order to use our systems. But beyond that, when you turn around and look at your team, they may not have all the parts of that project plan. They may have not sat through all the presentations you have. So you look to solutions. And I love learning. I love teaching. And people learn on different ways. And we're going to show you some different ways to bring everyone on board. So first, we showed you the RTP site. I'm going to now show you a different site. The RTP site has a lot of resources. So if you have a user base that learns by visiting the website and learning about the rules, these are some solutions. Go to the RTP website. Go to the FedNow website. FedNow has a wonderful learning platform, really a lot of content. And not to be judgmental, but maybe a little too much content. So if you're going to use the Fed site, be very specific with your user base on what should they go figure out. They've got a nice little animation here, and it's called the Fed Explorer. Explore the city. Nice, really interesting, interactive, and there's different places, right? So Instant Payment University is going to show you some training produced by the Fed, delivered by the Fed. Could be reading, could be a handout, could be a video, could be lots of things. And they're going to talk to you about different pieces of the FedNow solution, or in general, instant payments. The showcase theater is going to be solution providers. Now, if you're at this point that I think I'm talking to you at, you already have your solution providers. The technology tower is still going to be a list of providers, but they're going to touch on some technology. So if you need to know about, one of the things you hear today everywhere, it does everything, Dices makes whatever French tomatoes, whatever that saying used to be with the, if you don't know what I'm talking about, I'm sorry, it used to be a late night commercial on a Ginsu knife. ISO 20022 does it all, but does it? And I am a little controversial with ISO 20022. It does a lot, but it has to be implemented to do a lot. And you can't start with, it does it all. You got to start with, what is it? How does it work? What do I need to know about it? And ISO 20022 is the technology used in Europe with the UK's faster payments and SEPA. The EU has a pretty robust instant payment system where folks, it's been in production, I think, since 2010. So they're being used all over Europe. All right, so let's stop sharing that for a minute and keep going. The other place you can go, and NEACH is your location for that. So if you're a member of NEACH, if you want to be a member of NEACH, NEACH has a ton of solutions as well. Some of them are free, some of them are pretty advanced. Let me show you, and then I'll talk about it. Let me show you. This screen is courses. All right, let's show you that. So we have courses. Again, not pushing the courses. Everyone learns in a different way. The courses are pretty good. The 3 courses I want to point out here is the building blocks of faster payments. So again, if you're bringing your team along, they come to the table with a certain skill set and a certain knowledge set. Building blocks of faster payments introduces new or newer technologies that they're going to hear about. That course was originally developed because fintechs were coming into an institution and they were saying, we're going to take the ledger and we're going to send it to DLT, and the ISO formats will facilitate the transfer. And you at the time when faster payments were just rolling out were, can you back up and just use English to say everything you just said? That's why that course was developed. Great course, really level setting, brings everyone kind of to the same level. The next one I'm going to talk about is the introduction to instant payments. This was a collaboration with the Fed. So the site I just showed you, we shared those presentations and we NEACHized them. We make them maybe a little less sanitary, a little more real examples of how things work and what's really important. And finally, this faster payment certificate. As the industry grew, NEACH determined, and NEACH in the Faster Payments Council, determined that, there probably needs to be a certificate for all of this knowledge So they're in the process of developing a faster payments certification, not a certificate, not a piece of paper that said, hey, you took the class, but a certification that says you are a professional in this topic. There's a whole bunch of courses in there to get people on board. I think that's the last slide I'm going to show you. But the last resource I'm going to show you is brand new. It was brand new to me. It was brand new to me in May. And it is this book, right? And I hand the book because when I was a kid and you were doing homework, you went to the book and you said, where is it in the book? Where can I read about this? And today, and I experienced with, get really personal here. Experienced this with my children. I didn't know I became a tutor when I had children, but you became a tutor when you got children. So they would come home and they would say, I don't understand this. I don't know what they're saying. What does this mean? And my first question, 3 kids, and my first question would always be, where's the book? And I don't know what happened, but there's no books anymore. They don't exist. There's a flyer, there's what the teacher said in class. I don't know how to explain what the teacher said in class because I wasn't there. So you end up doing an internet search and you say, how do I solve that? And they tell you, no, that's not how the teacher said to do it. And, you know, it was a very frustrating time in my life. But where's the book? We have a session here that we started years ago that's called Where Does It Say That? And it brings you to the source document and says, where does it say that? And I gotta be honest with you, I haven't finished this book, but I can tell you, I got halfway through, let's do my bookmark here. I finished the ISO 20022 chapter. Fantastic. I have another podcast in this series. It's on ISO 20022. Biggest episode we have. People love it because it doesn't. What happens when you learn ISO 20022? You sit down at a screen, there's an instructor there, and it's a standard. It's an industry standard developed by like an ANSI organization, the organization that decides how far apart the little screw things are on a light bulb. Standards. The minute they start talking, slide 1, slide 2, they are in the depths of fields and formats and remembering this is a repeating section or this is a single section. And you know, I'm pretty technical. I always like technology. That's why I signed up for electronic payments. I get lost immediately. I still get lost immediately. Even getting to the standards, I think, in my opinion, are hard. They are maintained by an organization. You have to sign up for the organization. You have to prove who you are with the organization. For pretty much free access to them, which is great. But there's a lot of overhead to digging into a standard. This chapter, even if you bought this for the ISO section, this chapter is fantastic. It doesn't tell you any code, not one code. It tells you where it came from. It tells you what its purpose is. It tells you who's involved. And it goes down deep enough that it doesn't mention one piece of code or one format or one field, but it tells you enough to say, I get it. I get it. All right. Now, what were you saying about ISO 20022? And I'm going to close with this. This entire episode is based on a conversation with one member, and that member was implementing FedNow. FedNow is brand new. There's 800 different institutions implementing FedNow, and it's that point where the person who's done all the research and the homework and the contracts and the negotiations and the relationships and the vendors, they're turning around to their own institution and they're now saying, hey, we're doing FedNow. And the institution, you know, the other departments sometimes say, Fed what? These resources are available for your users. And they may not need to know the formats. They may not need to know all the details. But for, like, example, a cash management person, They need to know the use cases. I didn't get to the use cases. If you've watched this podcast or listened to this podcast before, that chapter in this book was written by Kevin Olson, the payments professor. So I know it's going to be good. And it's good for people who haven't been through all the use cases, don't know them like the back of their hand. It's going to explain in human to human terms, why do I care about this as a cash management officer? Why do I care about this as a customer service person? How am I going to explain to someone, you said to FedNow, it's gone, and we can't take it back? All that's in books, in these classes, in these websites. It's all available. Pick your pleasure. How do you learn? I still like to go to the book. I think this will be the textbook for instant payments, at least for the near future. Some of the concepts, actually, gathering all the concepts together in this one book, you would have to do an internet search with multiple results and multiple, presentations, videos to get what's in this book. NEACH is a non-profit association. We are not retiring on sales of this book, but we are selling it at a discount. That's what our purpose is. I think our purpose is to get resources into the hands of people. You can certainly buy this it's cheap. I mean, it's $29.99 online. It's $24 at NEACH. Just wanted to give someone a book that says, where does it say that? This is where it says that. We are a resource for you, for your team, if you're implementing instant payments, whether it's RTP, whether it's FedNow, whether it's same day ACH. We're a resource for you. And I just wanted to remind everyone, there are resources out there, and we're one of them. Have no wrestling story today. I think the wrestling is that you're wrestling with implementing faster payments. And if you could use a crystal ball to look into the future, they're going to be ubiquitous. I think at some point they're going to be interchangeable. So I literally just read an article today on Cross River. I'll show you the article. I'm very picky. I'm a very picky person. The only problem I had with this article was that it said that the Fed had 600 participants. They don't. They have over 800. That's my only issue with this article. And it's over here for me. Really interesting as you think of innovation, when you think of solutions. This is Cross River Bank, not a member of NEACH. And this is Mass Pay. No idea who they are. But what they say down here is really interesting for me. On Cross River's part, the new service depends crucially on the ability to funnel transactions through a single API. If you want to know about APIs, take the building block of faster payments course. This connection enables so-called intelligent routing, which underlays the ability to speed transaction processing. A Cross River spokesman did not immediately respond to this. This is from Digital Transactions Magazine. It's freely available to you. Again, one of those resources that you can find online. The idea here, right now, RTP and FedNow are separate. They don't talk to each other. They don't interchange. They do both run on a version of ISO 20022. So for the technology folks out there, could they talk to each other? Yes, they could. Do they talk to each other? No. The other issue here is ubiquity. And what happens with ubiquity is the Fed has 800 financial institutions. Great. There are somewhere around 7,000 financial institutions in the US. So if every one of those 800 starts sending out entries, faster payments, FedNows, I don't even know actually what we call them, but FedNow credits, they're going to hit a lot of dead ends. They're going to hit a lot of situations where it can't get there from here, right? Because the receiving institution isn't on FedNow. I think the idea of intelligent routing lets the financial institution say, oh, I have an instruction to send a payment. All right, where does it have to go? Are they on FedNow? Oh, no, they're not on FedNow. Oh, are they on RTP? Yes, they're on RTP. Let's send it RTP. Pretty intelligent. Same story. Are they on FedNow? Nope. Are they on RTP? Nope. We can send that as a same-day ACH entry. So I think that idea is coming. I think in the future, the generation, whatever they call them then, are going to say, what do you mean? That you couldn't send a payment everywhere at once? All the time? What? I don't understand. It's going to be crazy talk to them. But for us, we're building it. We're the pioneers. We're building these networks. We're building these solutions. And it's up to us to, educate ourselves on how it works. One more story, and I'll close the episode. We had a story of someone who was on one of the solutions, don't know which solution, and their fintech was taking entries. They were accepting them. Now, there's a lot of hurdles you have to get through about what accepting a payment is. It's instant. So if you accept it, it's accepted. Done. No returns. You can't send it back. It's accepted. The other party says, it's accepted. Out of our hands. The fintech was then saying, oh no, we can't accept it. After they accepted it. And accepting is a term in both payment systems. They were sending the entries back via ACH. Now, that can be done if everyone understands that. They were just doing it. So, and the purpose of that story is the financial institution didn't know that and didn't understand that. So knowledge really is important with onboarding faster instant payments. These are final payments. So once they're sent and accepted, they're final. Again, there are ways to get around it. There are ways to say, oh, we didn't really want to accept it. Can we negotiate? I really want to send it. Yes, there are ways to do that. But not if you don't know or understand what's happening with the payments, because there is no automatic ACH. In that fintech case, they were sending it back to the institution, but they were just sending it back to the institution. It was a very large institution. It was rattling around in a machine somewhere. They didn't know they came back. They didn't know where to put it. The money was just missing for that consumer for the entire time because they didn't know. They didn't know. So knowledge is power. Knowledge is power. That's where I'll leave you today. Thanks for listening. I hope this little heart-to-heart talk provided some value for you. Give me some feedback. Let me know. Thank you very much.
On behalf of NEACH, your trusted resource in payments, and our guests, I'd like to thank everyone for tuning into the podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode and want to hear more about payments innovation and modernization, you can find the Wrestling Payments Podcast on the podcast page of NEACH.org or wherever you subscribe to podcasts. Just search for Wrestling Payments in your podcast app. Thanks for listening.